here we go. I'm loving the poses, y'all. This is awesome. I mean, for those of you guys who are getting this on podcast, you got
the video.
You got to get the video
get the
because
video.
you guys' faces are.
And you got to see the hottest hat.
You got to see the hat.
Hey, Gorham Brothers. See, I threw a little free shot. I would love advertisement from Gorham Brothers.
Some sponsors.
You know what I'm saying? We
should get free hats.
Free hats. You know,
this is being brought to you by nobody.
Yes, nobody. If you want your name, insert your name. All you got to do is send us some stuff.
Give us a shout. 1-800-188-THAT-PODCAST.
1-8-THAT.
Yeah, I don't know if people know. I mean, when we originally doing these, we don't know what it's going to be called, but Steve has been advocating that podcast.
Well, what have been some of the suggestions that you've got for the names of the podcast when you put it on?
There's been just... I don't know.
You got Beers. You said Beers, Theology, and Justice.
Theology and Justice.
I was kind of offended by that one. You know, just the fact that I'm the only one who can't grow any beard, and you guys are like plush. It's kind of like, greatest, greater, and then like I'm just not even in the conversation.
But one of the things that we did get was him freestyling. What was that?
Oh yeah.
What was one of the suggestions?
You need to Google Dahadi Lewis and the So Gone Challenge. If you haven't seen that yet.
It's over 3,000 views.
Yeah, no, it hurts my heart that's the most important thing that I've said to this. That's my biggest contribution.
Over 3,000 views. Please Google it.
Yeah, So Gone Challenge.
But based on that video, suggestion was the pastor who shouldn't freestyle and Friends.
Hey, whatever I got to do. Just
love over hate.
Hey, I'm here for that. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So, again, man, it's always a pleasure doing this with you guys. I mean, we're talking about being advocates versus agitators, you know, and the responsibility and the call for the believers to be an advocate. Today, we're going to talk about our seventh R, and it's recognizing God's providence. It comes from verse 15 in the book of Philemon, where it says, and this is the Apostle Paul speaking. He says, "For perhaps this is why he was separated from you for a brief time, so that you might get him back permanently." You know, that's a very interesting take. Yeah. If you just look at that passage for a minute. I mean, Paul says, this is why he is referring to Onesimus, was separated from you, and that's Philemon, for a brief time. No, that brother ran away. You know what I'm saying? Like, Paul had an interesting take on this passage. Like, it was like, but what I love about it is just the idea that Paul, you know, he just kind of brings out is that God is in control. Like, he didn't lose reins for a while, and just kind of the sovereignty of God and his providence that he really believes in. It kind of reminds me of the Genesis 50, you know, passage with Joseph. When Joseph was confronted with his brothers, he says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. It was always a part of God's plan that he's able to take, you know, crooked sticks and make straight licks, you know, that old church saying.
Yeah. I think that's a really good and interesting thing to see God working within means, above means, you know, and not just in the conventions that we set up as human beings, because in their society there was a protocol of what should and should not be done, right? And obviously here Onesimus was on the side of something that probably should not have been done. We don't know all the details of what happened. Maybe he stole something, he ran away, or we don't know exactly, but Paul was sending him back because obviously it was the right thing to do in this situation. And I think just realizing that God is bigger than our conventions and the way that we do things. For example, you talk about immigration and people, you know, put immigration in this box of, well, that's just the way, you know, you got to obey the laws of the land and all this stuff. And I'm not against not obeying the laws of the land, but realizing that God is doing something bigger than people just staying in the lines and kind of knowing their place and kind of God's providence can work through these different things. And just because it looks like maybe it shouldn't be done, it doesn't mean that God is not at work in that somehow.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I mean, so that becomes the question: is it's like, if God is in control of all things, you know, and as believers, how do we recognize that all things work together for the good? You know, I mean, what I loved about it is that Paul, when he was, shipwreck. You know, he was like, I guess God wanted me to be here. If, you know, he was in prison, I guess God wanted prisoners. You know, so wherever he was, he just kind of always saw that as kind of God's sovereign hand. And so this wasn't just limited to Paul's, because, you know, it's easy to be biblical with other people. Right? But no, this is kind of Paul's posture. You know, it's just like he recognized the providence of God, that all things work together. And, you know, and he says, I learned how to be rich and poor, to abound and abase. You know, and so like how hard is it for us to constantly recognize God's providence no matter what the situation is?
Yeah. I think you spoke on it. This might have been a couple of podcasts ago, where perhaps what God is doing in the midst of our culture today is that he's positioned believers, the church, in this particular time because we are the most apt and equipped to deal with, I think, the things that we're seeing in culture. So I think it's even that view of God's providence, and what we've, I think, consistently said, not running from the elephants in the room. That perhaps as we begin to kind of talk about multi-ethnic church, you know, or just the things that we're seeing in culture, I think the racial disharmony, the election, that this is the time that God has so uniquely equipped the church to be able to respond. So his providence is allowing these things to happen on his watch.
Yeah, and I think even on the, you know, because I know, like, personally, the black and blue stuff. I mean, I've talked to my church about it. I was just like, when the you know, the strand of shootings took place, like, I know when I hear, I grieved. One brought me to tears, because I've been that dude who we, you know, as a group of us in kind of an older model car, all African Americans, we drive into this apartment building, knock on my friend's door. He wasn't there, so we leave, and it was dark. And so the cops must have thought, you know, they said, we thought you was robbing the place, because we just went in and went out. So they come on, they approach the car, not with, you know, they come with guns out of their holster, pointing at us, you know. And I just remember, and I'm just like, man, like, guns are pointed at me. Why? Just for being black with other black people in a car. And I just see it. And my cousin was there, and he was asleep during this time. And then so they have guns, lights pointing in the car, and I'm like, get up, you know, the cops. And then when I hit him one time, he kind of got nervous, and he startled, and he jumped really quick. And I just remember my eyes flashed. Oh my gosh, we're about to die. You know. And I just remember that those types of things come into my mind. So when I see that type of, you know, history, it hits me. But then I start recognizing, man, God allowed me to go through things so I can truly empathize. It was God's providence, you know, that allowed me to go through. It's God's providence that allowed me to go through the stuff that I talked about Angie and marrying a white woman. It was God's providence that allowed me to be both rich and poor. That I thought it was about me and why would God let me, but like, it felt like God has created me for this time, for this season, in a country that's divided, because I've been on so many different extremes of this thing. And that's why this subject is so dear to me, because I've seen, man, just how this can divide the country and divide our culture and divide the church so bad. So, you know, and so recognizing God's providence, and everyone has that story. You mentioned this idea of having a story, you know, and why we need to rehearse and reflect on our story, you know, in light of the larger story, the larger narrative that's going on.
That's good. Yeah. No, I think what was important there is, as you said, is to recognize that we all have a story. I think to recognize, and I love what you always reflect on, and I think because you've said it so much, I think in our relationship, I mean, the years that we've known, I mean, the decades, you know, the decade plus that we've known each other, that I know that there's certain things that have shaped your life, your ministry, and you see those things, whether it's the way that you run your family, whether it's the way that the church functions, and but you've not minimized the pain at times in those things. And I think, you know, that's sometimes the challenge, is to in those situations where you could have left that situation, guns drawn, hating every police officer, hating every white person that you see, and you've really allowed God to redeem that.
And literally it was hard. I mean, because I just remember, I mean, earlier in the time in our marriage, like when I would get pulled over by a cop, my wife would have to tap my arm, Dad, it's okay. It's okay, because I would visibly get like emotional because I would just go back and I would go through the history of that. I would go through the history of being pulled over by the LAPD and getting slammed to the concrete for no reason. You know, I remember these things, these stories, and I'm just like, man, you know, and it just brought up these things. And so literally there was a guy officer at our church at Blueprint, and I remember him coming to my house and he put on the uniform. And I went to him, I says, man, I just got to let you know, when you put that uniform on, it does something to me. Because of just, you know, all the history, all the stuff that is gone. And I think part of that allows me to recognize God's providence. And it really, talking to him allowed me to kind of go through the grieving and the reconciliation process, you know, but I had to be honest with my emotions and like run to the tension. But I was running not just to say, man, take it off. I was running to it because, man, I told him, I was like, man, I don't want that to be the case, but that is. That is the case. You know, and I was just like, man, if we can't be reconciled in the body of Christ, how can we ever?
It's funny. I was thinking about it. I want to throw this out to both of you and see what you think. Man, how can we use, I guess, that theme of it all happens in God's providence in a way that's not helpful, in a way that's harmful to people? Like what perhaps is a destructive way that we can see other people use that when people have experienced kind of things like Dhati has shared, and that might just be something I think as we have folks that are listening to say, well, we have to make sure that we're using that language in an appropriate way. Jorge, what do you think, bro?
I think not rushing too quickly to the you know, just saying that, you know, okay, you know, God's providence, God is in control, without realizing or helping people or walking with people through the impact of whatever it is that has happened to them. So just slowing down, and yes, God is in control. But man, this is something real that's happened. This is a real pain that's been caused, and not just flippantly throw a verse out or throw some theology out without seeing that people have been impacted by whatever it is that has taken place, and not just theologize people, but love people in the process, and try to help them get to that point and help them be able to reflect back on it in a healthy way.
That's good.
Yeah, I think I would say it's important because if we're not really willing to do points 3 and 4, run to the tension of injustice and run with the heart of reconciliation, then we can't do 7.
You can't do
right? That. You know, we can't recognize God's providence. We can't just say, oh, it's God's sovereignty. And I think that's what happens. Oh, it's the providence of God, but we're not willing to name the tension. Right? We're not really going to run to the tension of injustice with the heart of reconciliation. And I think you have to be doing all the other, you know, the other points, because a lot of times we'll just say this and just kind of means to stick your head in the sand, act like it's not happening, maybe it go away. You know, when you was young, you used to cover your head, your face up, and then like when you covered your face up, everybody else disappeared. It's like, you know, I'm still here, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still here, even though you don't see me.
We do that with the Bible, and we cover with the Bible, and hope the issues will go away, and they're still there. We just have to deal with it.
Well, it's funny, fellas, because I often think, man, if we, a lot of times when you think about, I mean, some of these tension points that we've talked about, if we interacted with these tension points like this in our marriage, with conflicts at work, it wouldn't be productive. So a lot of times what we do is when we kind of take tension points of race, politics, we treat those differently than you would within a family. And that's why I always have loved, one of the ways I think Dhati's always talked about the church. The church is not like a family. The church is a family. And so often I think as we're thinking through these tough issues, I think the question is, how would a healthy family deal with these deals? I mean, we wouldn't just bury them. If a person had expressed hurt or pain or frustration, you would take time to hear why. And so again, I think it kind of goes back to that, man. I think the way that you've always described the way that the church should operate, which has been helpful.
Think that's why it's good to limit this conversation primarily before we even go to the city, in a sense, is within the local church, because you can't give what you don't have. And really that's our next point we're going to talk about, is that we got to see one another as siblings, right? And until we really see that, then we're gonna miss it, because you know, because again, a call to everyone is really a call to no one. And if I say I just gotta do this with everyone, that means I'm not gonna really do it with anyone. But when you have I think that's one of the importance of the ecclesia, the local church, is that God gives us a tangible way to make the gospel visible. By saying, here's a group of people that I'm committed to be tangible and visible manifestation of what we believe and what we live out on a consistent basis.
It's good.
So, yeah. Well, I think this is good, brothers. This is
a good one.
Shorter
Anything
than
else?
music, but
Anything else?
straight to the point.
Yeah, that's it, man. I thought it was good.
Yes. All right. That's it. Peace.
Holla.